So today is the big day. It looks like Nintendo has finally actually come out and announced the long-awaited Nintendo NX system along with the rename. So that's pretty exciting. It's the new Nintendo Switch. So that's what everybody on the internet's talking about right now. Perhaps it's not as big a mega trend as the Pokemon Go app that just came out a little while ago. But shareholders seem to be liking it. Lots of stock options going up today on Nintendo's side of things. My name's Chris Gliddon. Welcome to Tiger Wolf. And today we're going to be talking about the Nintendo Switch that just got announced, previously known as the Nintendo NX. And as of today, October 20th, we have the newly announced Nintendo console, which is a home console meets a portable console all in one, which I believe is sort of basically the first time that anyone's done it. Before we go, we should probably talk about the brand name. It's interesting to see that they have gone away from something confusing like they did with the Wii U, which was arguably the worst name for a console ever, and maybe potentially one of the big issues with selling that console was that people thought it was just a screen add-on, that it wasn't an entirely new system. So the Switch announcement has had lots of people excited. Lots of people seem to be let down by it, though. So there's negativity going along, and people are feeling like, they don't want some gimmicky console. They just want like a really hardcore, great Nintendo console. But for the most part, it seems that the early receptions today, in the Twitter and on Reddit and on social media, seems to be pretty positive. So there's nothing really super surprising in the trailer that Nintendo announced today. It really is just confirming a lot of the rumors that people had talked about with this console. But I think what's interesting is they're finally doing something interesting with this console. There's multiple configurations so that you can mix and match it, and you can take it with you on the go. The commercial is a lot clearer than past Nintendo stuff. It actually shows you, where you can take this thing. You can take it on the airplane. You got these new joy pads that you can take with you and pull off of the console, turn it into multiple different configurations. So, one being that you can take the controllers off and have two players and have a little kickstand. So there's a whole bunch of really stupid and unlikely scenarios. I don't imagine that the two guys in the commercial that are playing basketball, or four guys that are playing basketball, I couldn't really see them, stopping what they're doing to stop playing basketball to go play this NBA EA Sports game on the Switch. But it's a novel idea, and I could see this being a sort of an occasional edge case that people bust out the tablet to do this. And what's interesting about this is they've got a really good processor on here for the first time. I think maybe arguably for the first time, trying to actually be something halfway decent with an NVIDIA Tegra custom processor. So, jury's out on whether or not this will be useful, like a good processor or not, because we haven't seen any specs as to whether this is 1080p at 60 frames a second or what it is. And some people are actually concerned that the frame rate may not be that great, judging by the trailer, because the footage that they show of the new Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild actually looks a little laggy and slow. So who knows? The jury's out as to whether they're actually showing footage of the Nintendo Switch version of the new Zelda game, or if it's actually they're just showing some sort of footage that they captured on another device and then they're doing it here. Now, my guess is it's actually probably the Nintendo Switch version of the game. So who knows? We'll see. They're obviously not competing. Nintendo's not competing with Sony or Microsoft in this as much, because they're going after a kind of a weird market. So this is almost a bit like when they first announced the Wii back in 2006, 2007. This is totally going after a market that is not the diehard market. This is more the sort of casual market like I would be. So, personally, I'm a little bit excited about it. I think it's truly kind of going after a PS Vita market, a console that I totally love. I think the PS Vita is probably the best portable console there has been up to date, other than perhaps the NVIDIA Shield. So it looks really exciting to see Nintendo doing something and working a little harder. I saw a quote somewhere that somebody said, "A desperate Nintendo is a great Nintendo." And I think that's fairly true for this one here. Nintendo is working harder at it. They actually have something to prove. You can tell their stocks have been suffering, and so they're showing up to the party again. And it's pretty exciting. Jury's out as to whether these weird little controllers are going to have motion controls. I think a lot of us gamers are thankful that they're de-emphasizing the motion controls in this footage. It doesn't really look like they're in a rush to do kind of gimmicky things that worked with the Wii. We've had a lot of games that are forcing us to try and use motion controls, but as we've seen from PlayStation Move and other devices, it's not really that interesting. It's kind of a gimmick. I mean, even the Kinect, which is cool, is really just a novelty more than anything else. Virtual reality is probably a better implementation of that whole gyroscope-based thinking, or even just iPhones and Android phones and tablets having that sort of motion. But even those games, it's just not as enjoyable to play with motion controls. I think with the Switch Pro controller, that's not very surprising here. They've released a new controller with it that looks very similar to sort of an Xbox-style controller. You've got the analog stick beneath the buttons. So it's a good-looking controller. It actually sort of reminds me of the Steam controller. I could be a little off there, but that's kind of what it seems at first. I think what's really exciting about this trailer is the games. So we already knew about the Legend of Zelda, the Breath of the Wild. But the one thing that's really got people excited about two is, number one, it looks like there's a brand new Mario 64 / Mario Sunshine / Mario Galaxy style game, which looks incredible. It looks a bit like it's the, I don't know if anybody's seen this, but the Mario 64 redone in Unreal Engine. That is an amazing little video on YouTube, and I'll link to that in the description if you haven't already seen it. But that's sort of what the footage of this new Mario 64 looking game looks like. And so for those of you who are into that sort of 3D Mario game, it does look pretty incredible. But the one that gets me excited is actually what's happening with this Mario Kart game. So it's hard to say whether this is a brand new Mario Kart or if it's an add-on or upgrade from Mario Kart 8. But there's a couple of key things that people have noticed in the footage, which was, you've got a new character on the right, which is Boo, and this new double items thing. So instead of just having one item in your inventory that you collect, you've got two items. So really excited about that. Anything Mario Kart does, in my mind, pretty much turns to gold. Probably the best Mario Kart games so far have been really like the very original Super Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo. The Mario 64 is amazing, and Mario Kart 8 is pretty much the best of the Mario Kart series. So anything that they do that is adding on top of Mario Kart 8, even if it is an add-on, I'm still ridiculously excited about that. It is still one of the kind of most accessible, friendly games for non-gamers to play, so that's very exciting. But even more exciting than that, actually, is the idea of Bethesda being on a Nintendo console. So you'll notice in the trailer that there's some footage of Skyrim, and a game dev has come out and said, some representative from Bethesda has said, well, actually, we haven't confirmed, we cannot confirm or deny that Skyrim will be on this device. So it seems like there might have been a little bit of a miscommunication between Bethesda and Nintendo. I don't imagine that Nintendo would want to do something as dumb as to confirm a game that is not going to come out on their system. I think it would be extremely stupid to say, hey, this new Fallout 4 is going to come out on our console. That would really cheese off another partner, particularly because I think this is the first time you've really seen Bethesda on a Nintendo console, portable or home, or now both. So my suspicion here, and I'm sure lots of other people are feeling the same way, is that Skyrim is going to be on this device. So it's really exciting to see what other games we might get with Bethesda. I think what's really interesting about this is we are kind of hitting a point with these sort of third-party engines for game developers with those kind of systems, it's not as big a concern that, there's not as many exclusives as there used to be. So we're not getting to this place where, Nintendo is obviously making most of their games exclusive to Nintendo consoles. So it will be interesting to see now that Unreal Engine 4 is confirmed as a platform you can develop games for the Switch with, as well as Unity. So between Unity and Unreal Engine 4, you really have kind of the big game engines ready for game developers to be able to pump games onto this new platform. And it really is, they're kind of saying it's, the best of all worlds. And truthfully, it is probably the first time we've seen a device that is trying to capture pretty much all of the different configurations of how people game right now. So that's really quite exciting, actually. And for me, I'm sure that there's a lot of people that are like me that do a lot of mobile gaming. Not on iPhone, because I hate that, or Android. But things like the PS Vita, the 3DS, and the 3DS is pretty lo-fi still. So the idea of having something like this that is a little bit more hi-fi, like the PS Vita is, and a little bit more modern than the PS Vita, because PS Vita, if you look at the user interface, it's still pretty, it feels aged. So I'm really excited to see what they do with the user interface of this. If they're paying as much attention to the design of the UI in this system, I will be very, very pleased, because so far, there's so many things I could say that I hate about the Wii U, even though I think it's a great system. The user experience on that system is aggravating as anything. So I'm really hoping that they pay some sort of attention to it. The logo and the identity of this kind of yin-yang logo and look and feel that they've got with the Switch, the brand name, they've really paid attention to some design around from the marketing side of things. So I'm really hoping that the whatever they do for an operating system will be better for us. And I think, kind of going back to games and partners, they did confirm this gigantic list of partners. And there's a bunch of great confirmed game devs on there. So one of my favorites, which is Chunsoft. So Spike Chunsoft is on there. DNA, how do you say it? So lots of good, kind of JRPG groups, Bandai Namco. But the most exciting for me is Square Enix, mostly because Square Enix and Nintendo had been on shaky ground. And I think a lot to do with the fact that, Sony owns such a giant portion of Square Enix. It's been interesting to see that there's some relationship building happening between those two companies. In particular, with Cloud showing up in Smash Brothers, it looks like there's some Square Enix action potentially coming onto here, and I'm hoping that Cloud being in Super Smash Brothers on the Wii U is a taste of what could happen in the future, and hopefully that top one would be, will we get this Final Fantasy VII Remake on the Switch? Because that would be fantastic. Assuming, of course, that this is actually a good remake. But who knows? But there's a lot of unanswered questions about it. We're going to look at this in the future. What's the storage capacity? Is it backwards compatible? And if it is backwards compatible, is it backwards compatible for the portable systems or the console systems? Or are they just chucking it out and going with the future? Which, to be honest, actually, in the case of Nintendo, may actually be a good move. And I'm a big backwards compatibility fan, but truthfully, if you think about it, that's kind of held Nintendo back. And a lot of people have criticized them that they're not embracing the future. And then when they did something like Pokemon Go, where they're working with Niantic, it felt progressive, like a new Nintendo. They're trying to try new things, do new things. And it's kind of excited. They tried to do new things with the Wii U, which was a pretty experimental device. And really, this console is not so much a revolution as an evolution of almost obvious ideas. It's just a very logical next step to the Wii U and mobile gaming. So it's kind of great to see. There's a bunch of stuff that looks pretty lame. Personally, I can't stand using two controllers with the Wii. I always hated that with the Wii, using like a nunchuck plugged into the Wiimote is pretty much the worst. I don't enjoy gaming like that, so it's good to see that you can at least use these Pro controllers. So I can't imagine that too many people are too often going to be, having a couple friends over and then we're just going to pull out these 2 controllers and play. Like, that'll probably be an edge case, like I said before, but we shall see. I think specs is the big question. What are the specs of this? How much is it going to cost is another one. So is this going to cost similar to the Wii U? I would imagine that it would be sort of in that same price point because it is this console meets portable. It's also an interesting note in the future that essentially by doing this, Nintendo is they originally had kind of 2 baskets to put their eggs in, and now they're actually putting their eggs into 1 basket. So instead of having their portable line and their console line, they're essentially combining those 2 and merging into 1 system, which is a very good move, I think, for Nintendo to actually create some focus for themselves. And it'll be interesting to see whether that results in this being a hit or a miss. So that's kind of what we want to hear from you next, is what do you think? Tell us what you think in the comments. Is this going to be a hit? Is this going to be a miss? Like, what's your opinion? Are you excited about it? Or do you think this is going to be a colossal flop? Is a desperate Nintendo a great Nintendo, or is it not? Anyways, let us know, and I hope you guys are having a great weekend, and we will talk to you again soon. Thanks so much for watching, and take care.